I never imagined my life would take this turn. I had been working as an assistant to Mr. Daniel Carter, the CEO of Carter Enterprises, for nearly 5 years. He was a reserved man, always focused on business. People called him ruthless, but I had seen glimpses of kindness in him, small gestures he never spoke about. One day, out of nowhere, he called me into his office. His sharp blue eyes studied me carefully before he finally spoke. "Emma, I need your help with something." That was unusual. He never asked for help. "Of course, sir. What do you need?" I asked. "I'm going undercover," he said, leaning back in his chair. "As a poor man, a struggling worker, I need to see how my employees really treat people when they think no one's watching." I was stunned. "You mean, you want to work in your own company but as an ordinary employee?" "Exactly, and I need you to set everything up, a fake identity, a basic job position, and no one, not a single soul should know the truth." I hesitated. "May I ask why, sir?" His jaw tightened. "I have a feeling that things aren't as they seem. I trust you, Emma. Will you help me?" I couldn't say no. Within a week, everything was arranged. Daniel Carter, the billionaire CEO, became Daniel Miller, a broke man looking for a job. With second-hand clothes and an old backpack, he walked into his own company as an entry-level worker. And that's when everything changed. Daniel, now going by Daniel Miller, started as a janitor in his own company. It was the lowest position available, but that was the point. He wanted to see how employees treated those they thought were beneath them. I had pulled some strings to get him in, but no one knew who he really was, not even the managers. As I watched him enter the building in his worn-out clothes, I felt nervous. Would he regret this? His first day didn't go well. "Hey, new guy," a loud voice called out as he stepped into the janitor's room. A tall, heavy-set man with a smug smile leaned against the wall. His name was Greg, the head janitor. "You're late." Daniel checked his watch. "But it's 8:55, and my shift starts at 9. Greg scoffed. "Yeah, well, I say when it starts. Now grab a mop, you're cleaning the executive floor today." Daniel gave a small nod and got to work, but it didn't take long before he saw how things really were. As he mopped the marble floors, executives walked past without even looking at him. Some whispered, others laughed, and a few sneered at his worn-out shoes. But the worst part? The employees. The same people he had trusted to represent his company. A woman from HR, Kelly, clicked her tongue as she walked by. God, they'll hire anyone these days. A junior manager named Jake intentionally knocked over his coffee, then smirked. "Oops, clean that up, janitor." And Greg? He leaned against the wall watching it all unfold. He didn't stop them. If anything, he encouraged it. But not everyone was cruel. As Daniel was cleaning up the spilled coffee, a voice spoke softly. "Here, let me help." A young woman knelt beside him with napkins in her hands. I recognized her, Sophie, an intern. "You don't have to," Daniel said, surprised. She smiled. "I know, but I want to." For the first time that day, I saw Daniel's expression soften. But, as I watched from my office, I knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Daniel continued working as a janitor, and every day he saw more of the ugly side of his company. Greg, the head janitor, barely did any work. He barked orders at others and spent most of his time in the break room, eating snacks meant for employees. He took extra long breaks and left early, but whenever a supervisor walked by, he pretended to be busy. Kelly from HR was no better. She openly mocked employees who needed help and turned a blind eye to harassment complaints. When a new intern timidly asked about his paycheck, she rolled her eyes. "Maybe if you worked harder, you'd actually deserve it," she snapped before walking away. But what hurt Daniel the most was Jake, the junior manager. He had been promoted just a few months ago. Daniel had personally approved his promotion, believing he was a hardworking, dedicated employee. But now, Daniel saw the truth. Jake bullied the interns, made sexist jokes, and took credit for other people's work. He belittled anyone who wasn't in a position of power. One afternoon, Daniel was mopping near the conference rooms when he overheard something shocking. Jake and Kelly were laughing in hushed voices. "This company's a joke," Jake sneered. "Carter's so rich, he doesn't even care what happens down here. We do whatever we want, and no one says a damn thing." Kelly smirked. "As long as we keep up appearances, he'll never know. He's too busy with his fancy billionaire life to notice how things really run here." Daniel's hands clenched around the mop handle. They thought he didn't care. They thought he was blind to what was happening in his own company. He had seen enough. But before he could leave, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Greg's voice joined in. "Oh, and by the way, you know that intern, Sophie? She's been asking too many questions. If she doesn't shut up soon, we'll make sure she doesn't last here." Daniel's heart pounded. Sophie, the only person who had shown him kindness, was in danger. He had started this experiment to observe. But now it was time to act. Daniel couldn't ignore it anymore. He had come here to observe, to see the truth with his own eyes. But now he had a responsibility to stop what was happening before it got worse. That night, he called me. His voice was calm, but I could hear the anger beneath it. "Emma," he said, "it's worse than I thought. Corruption, abuse, intimidation, it's everywhere. And Sophie, she's in trouble." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you going to do?" His answer was firm. "I'm ending this, but I need to catch them red-handed." The next day, he returned to work as usual, but this time, he was prepared. He carried a small hidden recorder in his pocket, ready to capture every cruel word, every abusive order. It didn't take long. Greg was his usual self, lazy and arrogant. He made another janitor do his work, then took a 2-hour break. Kelly from HR continued humiliating employees, mocking one for asking about maternity leave. And Jake? He made the biggest mistake of all. Sophie was cornered in the break room when Daniel walked in. Jake stood over her, a smug grin on his face. "You need to stop asking so many questions, Sophie," he said smoothly. "It'd be a shame if your internship just disappeared." Sophie stood her ground. "I only asked why the payroll records don't match up. If there's nothing wrong, why are you threatening me?" Jake's face darkened. "Listen here, you little... That's enough." Daniel's voice rang out across the room. Jake turned, sneering. "Stay out of this, janitor. This doesn't concern you." Daniel smirked. "Oh, but it does." And then he pulled out his phone and hit play. The room filled with the sound of Jake's threats, Kelly's insults, and Greg's laziness. Every cruel word, every piece of proof was there, recorded in crystal-clear detail. Jake's face drained of color. You set us up." Daniel's eyes hardened. "No, you set yourselves up. I just let you show your true colors." And then, he did something no one expected. He took off his janitor's cap, straightened his back, and looked Jake dead in the eye. "You might want to start packing your things," he said coldly. "Because I own this company." The silence was deafening. The room was frozen in shock. Jake's mouth fell open. Kelly's face went pale. Greg, the ever-smug head janitor, suddenly looked like he wanted to disappear. Sophie was the only one who didn't look stunned, just confused. She turned to Daniel. "Wait, what do you mean you own this company?" Daniel took a deep breath, then stood tall, no longer slouching like the janitor he had been pretending to be. "I'm Daniel Carter," he said, his voice calm but firm, "CEO of Carter Enterprises." Jake stumbled back. This is a joke, right?" He laughed nervously, but the fear in his eyes was obvious. "There's no way you're Carter, you're just some janitor." "Do I look like I'm joking?" Daniel's voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made everyone stop breathing. I had entered the room by then, ready with the security team. I could see the fire in Daniel's eyes. He had seen enough, heard enough. Now it was time for justice. He turned to Greg first. "You've spent years bullying the janitorial staff, taking advantage of your position and neglecting your duties. Effective immediately, you're fired." Greg's jaw dropped. "Wait, please." Daniel didn't even let him finish. He turned to Kelly next. "You, as head of HR, were supposed to support employees. Instead, you belittled them, ignored serious complaints, and let corruption spread under your watch. You're fired as well." Kelly gasped, shaking her head. "Sir, please, it was just a misunderstanding." Daniel cut her off with a sharp look before turning to the last person. "Jake, and you." His voice was colder now. "I trusted you. I approved your promotion because I thought you were a hard-working, dedicated employee, but now I see the truth. You bullied interns, stole credit, and used fear to control others." Jake's face was red with panic. "Sir, I can explain." "I don't want an explanation," Daniel interrupted. "I want you gone." Security stepped forward, ready to escort them out. Greg, Kelly, and Jake all tried to plead, to beg, but Daniel didn't budge. Then, he turned to Sophie. "You," he said, his voice softer now, "are the only person in this company who showed kindness to someone you thought was beneath you. And for that, I owe you more than just a thank you." Sophie blinked in surprise. I just did what was right. Daniel smiled. And that's exactly why you deserve a promotion. Sophie gasped. A promotion? Daniel nodded. I want people like you, honest, kind, and hardworking, to help me rebuild this company. If you're willing, I'd like to offer you a full-time position. Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, I told her with a grin. She laughed, wiping her tears. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. As security escorted Greg, Kelly, and Jake out of the building, a heavy silence hung in the air, soon replaced by hushed whispers rippling through the office. Employees exchanged nervous glances, their gazes shifting between the retreating figures and the man standing at the center of it all. Daniel Carter. Moments ago, he had been just another janitor in faded clothes, quietly scrubbing floors. Now he stood tall, exuding an authority that sent a wave of realization crashing over everyone. The same man they had ignored, belittled, or overlooked had been the CEO all along. Some employees lowered their heads in shame, remembering the way they had walked past him without a second thought. Others stared in shock, trying to process how they had missed the truth. The weight of their actions settled upon them, forcing them to confront a question they had never considered before. Had they treated others with fairness and kindness, even when no one important was watching? Daniel remained still for a moment, his expression unreadable. But deep inside, his heart was heavy. He had come here seeking the truth, but what he found had shaken him more than he had expected. The corruption, the cruelty, the way power had been misused, it wasn't just disappointing. It was a betrayal. But he had done what needed to be done. He let out a slow breath, his gaze sweeping across the office. This company was built on integrity, he finally said, his voice strong but calm. And from this moment forward, that's exactly what we'll stand for. No more abuse, no more fear. Everyone, no matter their position, deserves respect, and if you can't uphold that, then you don't belong here. The room remained silent, his words sinking deep into the hearts of those listening. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to argue. Nearby, Sophie stood quietly watching him with admiration. She had always believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when no one was watching. And now, seeing the most powerful man in the company stand up for those who had been wronged, she knew for certain integrity still existed in this world. Daniel turned to her and gave a small nod, as if silently acknowledging her role in all of this. A soft smile touched her lips, and just like that, everything changed. Daniel had come here to see the truth. But in the end, he did more than just see it. He fixed it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story and found something meaningful in it. If you did, please take a moment to like, comment, and share. It helps so much in spreading the love. And if you're not already subscribed, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any future stories. Your support means everything to me and keeps me going. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below. Until next time, take care, and keep believing in the power of change.